Marco Pierre White's vegetarian cookery course from BBC Maestro might be the best online cookery course out there. I've cooked just about everything from it, I've watched it and analysed it, and I think I'm going to tell you why you will enjoy this course too. I've previously talked about Marco Pierre White's cookery courses from BBC Maestro, but this vegetarian one is something different altogether. As you might expect, it's words of wisdom from the man himself, talking in the way only Marco can.
Remove the blinkers and allow your palate to dictate. There we are. Mushrooms, cheese, garlic butter, crispy onions.
And delivering it straight down the camera to you and telling you what he does to achieve the best out of vegetarian cookery. Why does this course exist? Well, apart from to make money, for 1 year Marco went vegan.
For almost 1 year of my life, I was a pure vegan.
For apparently no other reason than to test himself as a chef and to try and get the most out of his food. He feels like he wanted to push himself out of his comfort zone and try new things. All too often dinner is a protein with vegetables or a salad on the side. He wanted to change the bias of that in his cookery, much as they do in many cultures around the world, to make that vegetable the star of the show rather than relegated to the side. As with all Maestro courses, it forms a number of different lessons of 5 to 15 minutes each, where you can pick up a bite-sized chunk and watch it at your leisure. Each one deals with a different recipe. It's not technique-based, but recipe-based. When I looked at his more generic cookery course, one of my biggest complaints was that by learning the recipe, that was pretty much all you learned. You didn't pick up any of the hows and the whys Marco was doing something. This one takes it a step further. Now, the BBC Maestro course is just one of those in a line of online masterclasses, spearheaded by, funnily enough, Masterclass, and taken on by Maestro and more latterly Yes Chef, and there's probably others out there I haven't seen. But essentially, these are online cookery courses that you pay for with a subscription, watch the videos, and just become better. With Maestro, you can learn things, yes, like cookery, with Marco Pierre White and Vineet Bhatia and Richard Bertinet for bread making. There's also things about film, TV, and theatre. You can learn how to write musical theatre with Tim Rice. You can learn how to write stories with Alan Moore, and probably learn how to be grumpy too. There's things like Mo Godot's essay on happiness. Now, I watched this one on a whim, and my God, that guy's got a story. I'd strongly recommend you check it out. He had an awful lot of Shawshank before he got to the redemption. Quite often the BBC Maestro YouTube channel puts it up for free, so I'll try and find that and link to it. But essentially, you're either buying a subscription to the entire service or you're buying a singular course. This 5-hour, 25-lesson course from Marco Pierre White and BBC Maestro will take you through a wide range of different vegetable preparations. From making them the star of the show, there's plenty there to get your teeth stuck into.
So it's slightly larger than a brunoise, but smaller than a macédoine.
It comes with a PDF course notes book, but more on that later. So I've said I've reviewed his Delicious Food Cooked Simply course before on BBC Maestro, and my major criticisms of that were that you learnt the recipe, but you didn't really get under the skin of it. Well, this one feels very different. There's a greater sense of pace about it. You spend longer watching the man himself, pottering from stove to hob to oven. You spend longer really looking at what he's doing. And he spends longer about why he's doing certain things, which I suspect is actually because he had to force himself to think more clearly about what he was doing in order to cook with vegetables at the heart of the dish.
And what was amazing, it forced me to use my imagination to make vegetables interesting and delicious.
There are very detailed explanations and demonstrations of it. But don't worry, Marco fans who are after just pure Marco are going to get plenty of it. His usual mysterious wit and wisdom in hushy breath tones tells you more about celeriac and endive and truffles than you ever thought you'd like to know.
Why? Heavy in water content. But as the water content evaporates away, what you will hear is just quiet.
He often refers to Mother Nature being the artist and he's just the architect or something like that.
And that explosion of the sea.
Fans of the Marco Pierre White ASMR, don't you worry, he's got you covered. From coughs and splutters and breathy noises and chopping and boiling and sizzling, there's plenty of all that good stuff here. I'm definitely going to make a compilation of it because it's enormously satisfying to listen to.
Bang, cut in half, delicious. There we are.
He just makes the best noises while he's pottering around cooking. So if you were looking for a low-fat dinner, most of these aren't going to be for you. In fact, Marco indulges his love of butter so much in this course. So whilst he went vegan, most of this course definitely isn't. There's an awful lot of butter, an awful lot of cheese. It all tastes great, but trust me, very little of it is health food. Clearly, it's better for you to have vegetables than it is to have, pork belly. But bear in mind, most of the recipes are indulgent and do lend you great technique, but they're not health foods by any stretch. If there are two recipes I'd recommend you look for and watch intently, it's his risotto of wild mushrooms and his vegetable lasagna. The risotto of wild mushrooms. Marco has Italian heritage and claims to have learned this risotto by standing at his mother's side while she made risotto, herself of Italian descent. He didn't actually write down a recipe for this, but he just stood there and absorbed the techniques and the processes.
Some of my friends, when they make risotto, use wine, some don't. If I think of my mother, I'm sure she didn't.
And it's one of those slow-paced, pedantic recipes that really starts to show off why he does things, of why he's cutting things a certain way, of why he's simmering, cooking things in a certain technique, and equally, how he finishes and preps and plates a dish. Lots of great method in this recipe. The same with the vegetable lasagna. The vegetable lasagna is such a long, detailed recipe, about 15 odd minutes of technique, and everything is diced a particular way, and he says why. And he also says, and if you can't dice it, this is what you should do instead. And it's really about maximizing that flavor. He repeats this often, and he's totally right about maximizing the flavor from every ingredient. And yet, it's really intelligent as well. He removes the pasta sheets and replaces it with celeriac layers. Lots of really great stuff in here. And having cooked it myself, I can say it's intense and sweet and delicious. A really good take on a traditional beef pork lasagna al forno. If you're after something quick, I can recommend the baba ganoush, the roasted aubergine dip. I actually did that on a live stream I'll link to up here or down here or somewhere. It's really tasty, great fun, relatively quick to do as well, and really good to have as part of a big buffet or just by yourself snacking with some bread or chips.
All those flavours in the mouth, which explode at the same time.
And there's one I'm yet to do, but I'm absolutely fascinated by, and that's the stuffed cabbage à l'ancienne, in other words, old-fashioned cabbage. Marco harks back to his formative years at the box tree and how he was taught to prepare all these different things. Essentially, this is a dish that's breaking apart a cabbage and putting it back together again, but obviously with a lot more methods and techniques involved. This one sounds absolutely fascinating and a real one for celebrating that star cabbage dish. And then there's a whole section on different potato dishes, which naturally I feel great about. There's pomme maxime, there's rosti, there's fondant potatoes, and potato dauphinoise, which I've also covered elsewhere on this channel. All great methods to understand whether you should dry potatoes, whether you should wash potatoes, for what kind of preparation you're going to have them for. Another really great chunk of recipes in your arsenal. Even if you don't think of yourself as a vegetarian cook, this little battery of potato side dishes is invaluable for anyone wanting to get more out of the potato.
Man cannot live on potatoes alone.
Particularly amusing is the chip shop chips that he makes.
Everyone likes their chips at a different thickness,
which, as he finishes frying, he just dollops on some butter and tosses them in butter before serving.
The way I like to finish them, and I'm sure lots of people will disagree, is a little butter.
Because why not? So this is not particular to the vegetarian course, but I have a few little grumbles about Maestro themselves. Firstly, there's the PDF of notes, course notes that they provide, which are very detailed, very good, but they are formatted to work well on desktop. Small writing, large margins, great photography, huge file sizes, but on a mobile, really difficult. And I don't know about you, if I'm looking at a recipe while cooking, I've generally got my mobile around and not my laptop sitting about. So I wish they'd reformat the PDF as a mobile-friendly version. There's the technology as well. Since the last review I did, I've discovered the BBC Maestro app, which is not well publicised at all, which has all the course content, means I can cast the screen to different devices. Everything is fully closed captioned. I certainly like to have the captions on while I watch these, which helps me absorb the information better. Plus, you can adjust the playback speed if you want it slightly slower, or if you want to speed it up and get through content a little bit faster. The choice is yours. And then finally, the price. The price is a little bit annoying. You've got a fixed fee for a whole year's membership, and that's your model. You've got to buy the whole thing, fixed fee. I wish there was a monthly subscription, because I could dive in when I'm feeling like I can afford it, watch some courses, pause it, come back to it, just like you do with your other subscriptions in your life. And then you'd have the content you need when you needed it, as opposed to paying a decent chunk up front that is probably quite prohibitive for some people. However, I would say they very, very regularly run a 40% off deal. I think they just had one a couple of weeks ago as I write this, and there's usually one every few weeks on. So if you're thinking about it, perhaps just hang on, and they often run a 40% sale. Also, if you're interested in testing it out more, BBC Maestro do have their own YouTube channel where they upload a few tasters and odd lessons here and there across the range. So check those out and see if it's the style of content you're after. It is all exceptionally well made, and I do recommend this Marco Pierre White vegetarian course for anybody. If you're a fan of Marco, tick. It's full on Marco, 100% Marco. If you're a fan of just vegetarian cooking, I think it's a great accompaniment. Although I will say you're going to have to make some tweaks if you want to turn them fully vegan through his use of butter and cheese and the like. And finally, if you're just interested in getting better at cooking and understanding what you're doing more, I think it's a win as well. I thought the Delicious Food Cooked Simply was a lot of fun, but not a great course. This is a great course. This vegetarian one comes highly recommended. I hope you enjoyed that. If you know someone else who's interested in those cookery courses, grab this link and share it to them. I'd love it if you could do that. It helps the channel grow enormously. And if you want to find out some more cookery courses, I've got some others that I've reviewed over here. Marco Pierre White, Jamie Oliver, and I'd love to know more if you'd like me to review. I'll catch you next time.